This week, we decided to do a mailbag episode where we answer the questions that you sent in about African football. We'll do that after the break. Welcome to another episode of the African Football Roundup on the African Five-A-Side podcast. I'm your host, Maher Mazahi, and this podcast is brought to you by africasaCountry.com. So yeah, this week we're in a little bit of a dead period. There's a pocket of inactivity over the weekend where we didn't have any CAF Champions League or Confederation Cup. Obviously, no international break. We had just had to, suffer through the European club football. But we do have CAF Champions League this weekend, so we're going to be previewing that a little bit later on in the week. And we also have the CAF Awards that are happening in 2 weeks, so we can break that down and analyze that as well. I should be doing a little bit. I'm currently working behind the scenes to get some interviews lined up as well, especially with people that are taking part in the CAF Champions League, whether that be players or coaches. But since we are, like I said, in a little bit of a dead period, I decided this would be a good time to do a mailbag episode. So, if you want to get a question in for next time, because we're going to try to do this around maybe once a month, do follow the African Five-A-Side podcast, this channel on x.com. You can find a link in the description below, or follow us on YouTube, which you probably already do if you're listening to this. If you do, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I'll post a question, and sometimes it won't show up in your YouTube timeline if you just watch these when they're recommended to you. But if you're subscribed and you tick the notification bell, when I do make a post, that'll pop up on your YouTube timeline, and you'll be able to see when I put a call out for questions to come in. And that way you can get your question in for next time. And the more questions we have, the better of an episode it is, and the better conversation we have. So this is my appeal, my plea to you to get your questions in. So we're going to start with the international window, which is, by the way, I recommend you follow them on X. They do a really good job of covering the entire international window, not just in Africa, but all around the world. And they ask, do you think Niger can keep the momentum going? Crazy good year for them. Nearly reached the AFCON, and they sit second in the World Cup qualifiers for 2026. Look, I'm not going to act like I watched all of Niger's AFCON qualifying matches. I did watch them against Sudan, and I did watch them a few times over the last 2 to 3 years because they were drawn in Algeria's groups. I think actually for World Cup qualifying and for a few different other competitions as well. So I have seen enough of them to say that I'm not surprised they finished where they did in AFCON qualifying. I'm not surprised that they beat Sudan so impressively and that they are making a run in World Cup qualifiers. When I remember watching them, when I watched them 2, 3 years ago, what really scared me about them was their attacking front line. If you're Ghanaian and you're watching this, or if you know somebody that's Ghanaian, ask them about the name Victorian Adebayor. This is one of those players, that on social media they say the streets will never forget. This is the African football version of that. This guy, he's only 28 years old right now, but he probably feels like he's 34, 35 years old, because when he blew up, he really blew up in the Ghanaian Premier League. I think he was, for maybe it was 2, 3 years where he just completely destroyed it, leading goal scorer. And the goals that he was scoring were shocking. Like, he was humiliating defenders. He's a left-footed, really skilled attacking player that was playing on the right wing that would cut in, get shots in on goal, put in great crosses. And I think if I'm not mistaken, no, I think this might be wrong. I was gonna say maybe Ghana were trying to naturalize him. I recall something like that. But when I asked about Victorian Adebayor to Ghanaian colleagues or to other people that know him, what I heard was that he wasn't necessarily the most disciplined guy. Like, he really was playing football for the just for the kicks, like he just because he enjoyed it so much. He was not really the most professional player, similar to what we said about Yusuf Belali, but maybe worse. Um, but still, when he's in form and on his day, he's unstoppable. So they had him on the right wing, Daniel Sosa, who we spoke about on this channel, who killed Sudan. The short, stocky, powerful. He's not really short, but 5'10", stocky, powerful Ghanaian striker that was naturalized as a Nigerian citizen. They have Mohamed Wankoye, who also another talented winger from Niger that has more than 50 caps. Played in Europe for a brief period of time. I think played for Horoya if in Guinea, for that powerful club in West Africa. Very respected player as well. Boubacar Hanikoy, or Soumana as they called him in Algeria, because he's pretty much bounced around at many top clubs around Africa. Currently playing for TP Mazembe, if he's still there. I haven't really been following. He's just like a serviceable striker. But again, playing at clubs like Mazembe, CR Belouizdad, many different top clubs in the African continent. And he was never like a deadly striker that's going to bang in 10, 20, 30 goals a season. But he's, like I said, serviceable. You kick the ball up, he's going to have good hold up play and involve other attacking players around him. So those front four players, I mean, for me, they're very underrated. And again, they're not players that maybe the casual African football fan will know too well because maybe they're not following the Ghanaian Premier League and Victorian Adebayor or Mohamed Wankoya at Horoya, but they were underrated and they're, yeah, talented. And I really did believe in them. But Adebayor, like I said, not really professional, fell off. I think currently playing for a smaller club in Tanzania at the moment. Wankoye hasn't been called up recently as well. Boubacar Hanikoy not playing for TP Mazembe. Only Daniel Souza is the only one that really stuck around and continued to consistently perform. So when I watched them against Sudan, I was a little bit pessimistic early on because I said, okay, they don't have that front line anymore. What do they have? And what I noticed is that the midfield, it was Yusuf Umaru, who I highlighted after Daniel Souza as probably being the man of the match. Number 6, playing, I think, in Tunisia for, it might be Club Africain. Just in that single pivot role, spraying diagonal passes all over the place, showing really great leadership. When they scored the first and second goals, he's the one that was sprinting to the goal to make sure Niger get the ball back so they can start attacking again because they need to score as many goals as possible. He's the captain of Niger. He's the one that impressed me the most after Daniel Souza. And then when I watched Mazembe last time around, the other box to box midfielder that played against Sudan as well, Usaini Baramosi. And he's like, again, more of a box to box role, not the single pivot role. Really impressive in how much ground he covers and getting in the attacking areas as well. So now I'm more impressed with their midfield than I am with their attacking line. So they do have talent. And um, for a country that's not tier one, let's say tier one is top 10 African nations. For a country that's not tier one, not even tier two, I'd say Niger is probably like tier three, right? Pot three. I think they're the best in their class at recruiting. So I talk about Daniel Sosa not really being Nigerian, and I shouldn't talk like that because we don't say that, when all these countries around the world naturalize their naturalized citizens with outstanding talents, and everybody does it. Everybody does it. Well, not everybody, but I would say 70% or 80% of nations do it. If they see like even like a world class nuclear physicist, and they say, oh, this guy has something to contribute to the country, they're going to give him citizenship. And I'm not going to talk about the Gulf countries and what they do with athletes. Again, Americans do it, Western Europeans do it, even for footballers. And so, why do we always laugh when it's just African nations that do it? But Niger does do it. So, Daniel Sosa, I don't think has even an ancestor that's from Niger. He's Ghanaian through and through and was just naturalized. But if you go through the rest of their squad list, they have no less than half a dozen players, and I'm pretty sure it might be even more. Players that are born in Ghana, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, recently Sako, the defender, and abroad in Europe as well. Some of them do have Nigerian roots, some of them don't. But the Nigerian Federation is doing an outstanding job of either identifying this talent early, either naturalizing them like they did with Daniel Souza, or at least if they do have Nigerian roots and they don't have to go through that route, they at least convince them to come and play for Niger, the Niger national team. And so that coupled with a coach like Bedou Zaki, who worked wonders with Ittihad Tanger in the Moroccan Botola Pro, won Algerian Cups with Sierra Belouizdad. He's had success at a few different clubs that he's coached at in North Africa. He's proven that he can be a good coach on occasion. Now, I'm not saying he's the answer. He's the greatest coach, and everybody should hire him. But on occasion, in the right circumstances, he can do good things. So that coupled with good talent that you recruit from all over the place, coupled with a good coach, I think is why we're starting to see them consistently improve. And one final note for the future, I don't think this is the end we're going to see, the end of Niger, for example. Um, the Sahel countries, Mali, Niger, Chad, I think you can throw in Burkina Faso, but especially Niger and Chad, if I'm not mistaken, these are the fastest growing countries in Africa and in the world. I think the birth rates are still upwards of five per woman giving birth. And so I'm very, very interested to see how these countries develop over the next couple of decades because the amount of human potential they have is going to be off the charts. So with the right coaching, the right investment, again, the potential is really really high. I think it wouldn't be a huge surprise to me if 20 years from now, if I'm still alive, if I'm still covering African football, which I hope I am for both, um, we're going to be seeing these teams, national teams from the Sahel, be in the top 10 of African football. If you compare them, for example, to a Djibouti or Eswatini or Lesotho, these are even Botswana. These are national teams right now that are comparable to those of the Sahel countries. I don't think that's going to be the case 10 years from now. I definitely don't think that's going to be the case 20 to 30 years from now, just for the Sahel countries, but also a nation like South Sudan is another example of that. So it's always interesting to look at demographics and to think about long-term human potential. So need the right investment, um, but I think Niger is going to be continue to improve, and I think they're going to be a country that we're going to have to reckon with maybe decades down the line. I can't believe we're making predictions decades down the line. From Niger, and speaking about eligibility and nationalism, let's go to another question. This one from Ole31, who says there was the curious case of Emilio Nsue being banned by FIFA over ineligibility because of his nationality, but no one ever came out with clear details. Could you delve into that? Also, why is it possible for Equatorial Guinea to use these players who are not nationals in their squad? And that's why I wanted to move from Niger to Equatorial Guinea. Um, it's true that this is a little bit of a weird one. Thankfully, it's coming to a close because Emilio Nsue was suspended this year in May for 6 months. So he didn't play in the November window, but I'm assuming he should be eligible to be called up next year in March when the FIFA World Cup qualifiers resume. That is if uh, the Equatorial Guinean Federation want to bring him back. Because remember, even prior to the fact that even before he was suspended, he had fallen out with the Equatorial Guinean Football Federation administration. It might have been the president for a few different reasons. For they were saying like there was huge amount of disorganization at the AFCON, just so many different reasons. But anyways, um, so what happened here? Um, One thing, the first thing I would say is that National Association allegiance. So like playing for Equatorial Guinea as opposed to playing for Spain, who he used to play for. Making that switch, that's something that's been very modulable over the last 2 decades, and Africa is at the heart of this issue. Um, in modern football, when I say modern football, let's say from the 1970s and 80s on, because back in the day, like I think Di Stefano played for Argentina and Spain. It used to be possible to switch for national teams fairly easily in the 40s, 50s. But when we talk about modern football, football as we sort of know it, it used to be the case that once you play for a youth national team, for example, Tunisia under 17 or Tunisia under 20, you're locked in. You cannot make a switch, especially if that's the only nationality you have. If you're just Tunisian, for example, you're not French Tunisian or Italian Tunisian. Now, this is what happened to Emilio Nsue. Emilio Nsue played for the Spain youth national team. According to FIFA, they claim that he did not have Equatorial Guinean citizenship when he played for Spain back in 2003, I think, or 2004. So they claim that he should have been locked in. He could not make the switch. Fegifoot, the Equatorial Guinean Federation, say this is a lie, that the Constitution of Equatorial Guinea says that as long as you have a parent that's Equatorial Guinean, you're a citizen. And his father apparently was born in Equatorial Guinea and apparently is a citizen. And as a result, he was always a citizen. Even if you don't have a passport, even if you don't have, the birth certificate, you're still a citizen, whether you like it or not. It's in your blood. So this is where I don't understand right here because I'm not a constitutionalist. I don't know the Constitution of Equatorial Guinea. I've never read it before. I don't know how FIFA can claim that he was never a citizen. I don't know if, for example, did Equatorial Guinea change the constitution after uh after he switched allegiances sometime in the mid 2000s? Because in the mid 2000s, Equatorial Guinea, for the men and the women, they go on a huge splurge of naturalizing Spanish citizens some with Equatorial Guinean roots and maybe some without, and they give them Equatorial Guinean citizenship. And the women's national team has won two Women's Cup of Nations as a result of this. And the men's national team have also obviously become a much better national team in the 2000s, in the mid 2000s especially, 2010s on, than they were in the 90s or 80s or 70s. So I don't know the legalities. Um, but the crazy part to me is that he was suspended for two matches in 2013. Yeah, so I don't know the legalities of it, but he was suspended for two matches in 2013 because FIFA said they didn't complete the change of allegiance, the change of national association eligibility. Because if you play for Spain and then you wanted to switch, it wasn't possible before 2004, even if it was the Spanish youth national team. Um, and so what you have to do is you have to write a letter to FIFA, send in a bunch of paperwork, and FIFA has to approve the change in nationality, at least sporting nationality. FIFA says that that wasn't completed, and he played in two matches in 2013, and he was suspended, and Equatorial Guinea forfeited those matches. Um, and then after that, this is the craziest part, he just started playing again. And I don't know if FIFA turned a blind eye, nobody complained, so he just played for 10 years and nobody ever thought of it again until 10 years later after the AFCON, after he finished leading scorer of the AFCON, after he's captained his national team for I don't know how many matches. They say, hey, but we never actually completed the switch for his national uh, allegiance, his eligibility, his sporting eligibility. And so they suspend him again for 6 months this time and they make Equatorial Guinea forfeit another two matches. So for me, like, I don't understand how that happened. And it just makes everybody look bad. Makes FIFA look bad, CAF look bad, Equatorial Guinea Federation look bad. Everybody looks bad for allowing this to happen, and then for waking up 10 years later. I think there should be like some kind of statute of limitations where if after 5 years you realize that you've slept on something, just let it go. Because yeah, like I said, it doesn't make anybody look good here really. But to get back to the change of eligibility rules, so in 2004 it was Algeria that petitioned FIFA to allow switches between youth national teams. So, for example, Emilio Nsue played for the Spanish youth national team. If before the age of 21 he decided he wanted to play for Equatorial Guinea and he had not had one senior cap, he could have done it after Algeria's petition in 2004. He had to have been an Algerian citizen prior to him playing for the Spanish youth national team, and he had to have made that switch before the age of 21. So that's the rule that Algeria petitioned FIFA for, and FIFA granted it. And as a result, players like on the Algerian national team, players like Nadir Belhaj, Antar Yahya was a big one. These players all got to make the switch in 2004. In 2009, Algeria petitioned FIFA again, and this one was extremely consequential for the African continent, because the prior rules were that you could make the switch, but before the age of 21. Um, and yeah, and you had to have had both nationalities even when you played for the first national team. Again, FIFA say that Emilio Nsue didn't have Equatorial Guinean nationality when he played for Spain the first time. It's a very stupid technical rule, but um, yeah, I guess they have to go by the letter of the law. So the Algeria switch in 2009 was even more important. It was the player can make the switch at any time, at 27 years old, 29 years old, 34 years old, 42 years old, so long as they haven't played a senior international match for another country. And so here's where you have players like, Kevin Prince Boateng. You have players like um, the entire 2010 Algerian World Cup national team, not the entire one, but a lot of them. Players like Mourad Megni, Hassan Yebda came in and were very influential in the 2010 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Um, I don't remember who would be a similar case for Morocco, for example. I think Younes Belhanda was one. Uh, I don't know if Hakim Ziyech played for Netherlands, but basically this was for the next decade or so until 2019. This was the most important rules, especially for national teams that had big diasporas in Europe. So players, because they would play for, the country of their birth, most probably France. This is where most of, the African diasporas live, and they'll play for the France under 17s, under 18s, under 19s, under 20s, And then a lot of the times they would wait because they think they're good enough to make a senior national team cap for the French national team. So they get past that threshold of 21. So they go into 22, 23, 24, 25. And now this new rule, this amendment in 2009 that came in, all of a sudden it opened doors to them that weren't open before. And if a World Cup comes around, they could be tempted to be like, oh yeah, I want to play in that World Cup. Can you please, let's make the national eligibility switch. So that was very, very important. Morocco come back almost 10 years later to make another amendment where the previous rule that came into effect in 2009 was as long as you don't make one senior international appearance for another nation. Morocco says you can make senior international appearances. What if they're just friendlies? What if you make like less than 3 friendlies, and then you decide that you want to change allegiances? And FIFA agreed to it again. And so this is where a case like Wilfred Zaha, for example, I think he played one friendly match for England, and then he realized, I want to represent the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, the country of his parents, particular his father, who's a big Cote d'Ivoire football supporter. And and yeah, because of this rule that Morocco petitioned towards the end of the 2010s, that all of a sudden became the case. And they were really pushing it for a player named Munir al-Haddadi. Munir, when he was, I think, 17 or 18 or something like that. Big prospect for Barcelona, one of these attacking wingers. And sure enough, sort of falls off, plays for Sevilla, and he's not what he used to be. But I think what European national teams were doing was that they were locking these players up by giving them a friendly match. Here, let's just play him for one friendly, call him up. That way, this African team can't steal him from us. And so, what Morocco's amendment did at the end of the 2010s was unlock that door as well. And so, national, eligibility rules in football, they've been changing for, like I said, 2 decades now. This isn't anything new. And because they've changed so drastically, again, I think it's stupid for FIFA to come back 10 years later and suspend Emilio Nsue for a technicality, really. Like, who cares, Like, the fact that he didn't have Equatorial Guinean citizenship when he played for Spain in 2003, it's like, and Equatorial Guinea even denies that. They say, no, that's wrong. It's like, who cares? Like, with all of that we've gone through now, just let it go. So, like I said, the good news is that his suspension is up now. And so, as long as he fixes his differences with the Equatorial Guinean Federation, he'll be back in playing in March for the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. But those 2 matches lost, I mean, that hurt them. So, if those results don't get overturned, I don't think they have any chance of qualifying for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I'm going to include, because you said the details were not very clear, I'm going to include a link to FIFA's decision. You can find it in the description below. That way you can read for yourself what they found. Now let's move on to the CAF Champions League because Adam K asks, why does the CAF Champions League keep getting more and more boring in every metric possible? Al Ahly will win it again. There's no reason Al Ahly won't except for themselves. And every other competitor is either inconsistent or doesn't have a fan base, and it feels like most games end 1-0 or 0-0. This was an interesting question, and I'm going to throw it back to you guys. Do you agree with this assessment? Do you think that the CAF Champions League is getting more and more boring? I can understand what Adam is saying, but I'm not sure I personally agree. Um, First of all, I don't agree that Al Ahly is going to win again. They just drew again in the Egyptian Premier League. They seem to be getting a little bit complacent. They have a tough trip coming to South Africa. I think I read on social media that they never won in South Africa. So they're going to Pirates, who were very impressive against Sierra Belvisdad. Who knows if they're going to manage to get a result over there, but yeah, they're going to get out of the group anyways. But I think they're at the end of a cycle with a certain group of players, and I don't think they're going to win it again. But I understand your point that they've been dominating this competition. And he says every other competitor isn't consistent or doesn't have a fan base. Shots. He's talking about maybe teams like Sundowns or Pyramids. Consistency. You could look at like Wydad Casablanca. But I understand what he's saying. Like I said, it's true that it's the same old teams, but it's the same old teams everywhere. Even in Europe, it's have a big four, big six in England. You have the Milan teams. You have Roma, Juventus in Italy. You have Barcelona, Real Madrid in Spain, and then Atletico Madrid, who over the last 15 years, everywhere it's the same. You have an elite, of clubs, whether that's in South America, Europe, Asia, Africa is no different. And here it's like I think a case where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer because if you're good, you're playing in these competitions, you're winning prize money, you have more money to invest into the squad, and you're going to probably win more and more and more. I think that's the case between Al Ahly and the rest of the clubs in the African continent. I think the gap's been getting larger, but it's also the case between the elite of clubs in African football and the rest of the clubs. Like the top four that are going to be playing in the FIFA Club World Cup next summer in the Americas, according to Gianni Infantino. So I put a little bit of salt on this because he also said that teams competing in the African Football League were going to be getting $20 million each, and we know that that never happened, and now the African Football League is a forgotten endeavor. He said that they're going to be getting $50 million for their participation. So imagine if Al Ahly and Sundowns and Esperance and Wydad get $50 million. You don't think that they're going to grow even further? They're gonna put even more space between them and the rest of the competition. So yeah, it's sort of a case of success breeds success, money breeds money. But the reason why I don't get bored, this is why I disagree with you, Adam, a little bit, is that when I watch the CAF Champions League, I'm not watching it to see who's winning. If I was, then I would get bored because, like you say, Al Ahly have dominated, and it's been the same 4 or 5 clubs. What I'm watching is on the continental scene at the club football level, are we seeing progress in terms of coaching in particular? That's why Rolani Mokwena was such an exciting personality for me. Like tactics, I'm studying supporters movements. So ultra groups and like last year, for example, in the CAF Champions League final when they unfurled that tifo for the Palestinian cause, I thought that was sensational. That's more sociological than sporting, though, but that's another thing I'm watching. And I'm also keeping an eye out for young talents. And we saw in the first match day, for me, that was the most exciting thing about the CAF Champions League was, man, there was no less than half a dozen players, 6, 7, 8 players that were very impressive in the CAF Champions League and that I think are going to be the stars of tomorrow. So for me, all of that is the reason why I watch the CAF Champions League, and that's why I don't find it boring. And I'm going to add one last thing is that we're in an era right now where social media is starting to become a thing in African football over the last 5 years or so. And we used to just talk, I think, during around AFCON time, but I'm starting to notice that there's a real base that's starting to get interested in a competition like the CAF Champions League. And now we can have discussions from people, from South Africa, Tanzania, there's on this channel, there's people from Sudan, from the Gambia, and people are commenting and discussing and learning from one another. I learned that, for example, Orlando Pirates, or in South Africa, they have a dance that sort of mimics the gritty, something called like Coco Melon or something like that. But I wouldn't have known that before. So like this back and forth that's all of a sudden happening is bringing the continent closer together, and I'm learning more about people from all over the continent. And that's another reason why I'm enjoying watching the CAF Champions League and talking about it. But I agree that if you just care about who wins, it can get boring quickly. But try to look past it into the other things, and maybe you're gonna find, uh, yeah, a lot more interest in it. Final two questions. Number one, Robbie10137 says, please, please, please make an episode on the Egyptian golden generation who won the AFCON 3 times in a row between 2006 and 2010. I will be working on like a rewind series where we look at 5 of the most heated matches in African football history. If you have any suggestions for that, um, put that in the comments below. Algeria versus Egypt in 2009 will absolutely be one of those. But yeah, I will be working on a sort of like a flashback series, I think, where we're going to go into those matches in a lot of detail. He says, my question to you is how can club football in West Africa need to do in order for them to be competitive in CAF Champions League and CAF Confederation Cup? Also, are you planning to visit South Africa anytime soon? January of next year will be a good time as Soweto Derby is taking place, and you can enjoy the city of Cape Town where the weather is amazing and places to see. Man, I would love to visit South Africa, and I have to soon because I know so many people over there, so many good people. I hope I'll be able to in 2025. Hopefully, not in the winter, as you say, the summer for us, the winter for you guys, because the weather won't be great. But if I do, I'll make sure to, you know, do a lot of football reporting and content production on this channel and elsewhere. I'm for sure going to Kenya in the summer. That's the plan, at least. Definitely be going to other countries in North Africa around the CAF Champions League knockout stages. South Africa is one that's in the back of my mind, and it just depends on, everyday things, family, finances, so on and so forth. But I really hope to make it out there. Further question though, how can West African clubs be successful? My answer is that West African clubs won't be successful because there's no political will, because there's too much money to be made with the ecosystems that they have right now. I remember, just to tell you a small anecdote, there was the African Youth Games in 2018 in Algeria. And this is an under 15 football tournament. Let me repeat that, under 15. And there was Cameroon, Morocco, Algeria, and Nigeria. I think there was just four teams. And this was happening in Algeria. So in my backyard, I figured I'd go and check it out. And I took my camera with me and I was taking photos. Morocco had a very impressive setup with, like a Dutch coach, and they were playing good football and everything. Um, Cameroon and Algeria was much more subdued. You could tell they invested less resources into this. Nigeria came, I swear to God, maybe a staff of 4 or 5, maybe 17, 18 players. And these kids, again, are under 15. So 13, 14, 15 years old. There was maybe 7 or 8 scouts from Nigeria and agents of players already there, already trying to find the next star. And that shocked me. And I remember speaking to a guy, I want to say his name was Uche from Spain. It might be an agent as well. And he was just explaining to me that, man, even at this age, everybody is just, it's like sharks. It's predatorial. Everybody's just seeing who can the next talent be so I can whisk them away, get them trials, get them to Europe as quickly as possible, become their agent, become their manager, and make money and sell them to clubs and put that money in my pocket. If that's the ecosystem that you're working with, how can you expect clubs to, bring a player through the ranks, have them play, with the youth teams, get a senior cap, have them grow and mature into the 20s, 21, 22, 23, 24 years old, and then finally sell them off to Europe, which is what happens mostly in North Africa or even in South Africa. You see like the wingers on in for Orlando Pirates are 20 years old. If they were if they were Nigerian, they would already be in Europe right now, without a shadow of a doubt. Or not just Nigeria, I don't want to just pick on them, but also from Guinea, um, Senegal as well. The one country that maybe bucks the trend a little bit is Cote d'Ivoire, where players do leave early, but the clubs do manage to hold on to some players for a little bit longer as well. So, if agents and academy directors are more influential than clubs and club presidents, kids, first of all, the kids themselves, they don't dream of playing for these clubs because these clubs haven't had any success recently. So it's not like back in 2004 when Enyimba won a CAF Champions League, then maybe a kid is dreaming of winning the CAF Champions League because he sees, the celebrations and he sees how those players become heroes. If it's like such a long lost notion, a kid is not even going to want to stick around. And if everybody around him is leaving at 18, and again, if agents and academy directors are more influential than club presidents, because for me, that's the symptom that I've seen in Nigerian club football is that the clubs are weak. They can't pay salaries. They can't stand up to, and they themselves a lot of times will get into it and call an agent and be like, hey, I have a kid, come take this kid and, give me 5%, give me 10%. So I don't think there's will to change things. And that's why I don't think at many West African clubs, particularly in countries like Nigeria, Senegal, maybe Ghana, I don't think things are going to change anytime soon. Once we start seeing clubs grow as institutions, have strength as institutions, want to be ambitious as institutions, once we start protecting these players earlier on, I think that's when we're going to see things change. But again, there's too much money to be made. And even like I said, the kids, they want to leave too. Um, One final anecdote, and I know I'm droning on and on and on, but I remember I spoke to Cheikhou Kouyaté, the Senegalese midfielder, and I've told this story many times before on other podcasts. Player that's played more than 100 times for Senegal, played for Crystal Palace, played for so many, West Ham United. I interviewed him when he was playing for West Ham United in 2016. And he told me a story of, being an attacking player actually, and an agent coming when he was 16 years old and taking him to trials all around France. And he was like the best player in his neighborhood, and he was expected to make it. Excuse me. And at the end of the trials, he didn't make it, and none of the clubs in France wanted him, and he had to come back home with this agent of his. And he came back home, and what he said like sort of scarred me, hit me right in the heart. He said it was so weird to see that the people that love me the most, speaking about his mother, his parents, they weren't happy to see me. When you come home, usually after a long period of time, especially if you were struggling abroad, you want to come home and you want to give your mom a big warm hug, and you want to see that they're happy to see you. And it's not like they did this because they don't like him or something like that. No, they had so much hope, like they wanted him to make it because sometimes, that's necessary for the entire entourage, the entire family, for the player to make it. And fortunately, he did make it later. He went on another tour and he was picked up from a club in Belgium, and he made a great career in Europe, and he's a national hero winning the AFCON. But imagine what you have to go through as a kid if you're 16 or 17 and you come home and you can see in your family's eyes that they're not really happy to see that you're there. They love you, but the fact that you're there means that you failed. So again, that's a lot of a lot of pressure on these kids, and that's why I don't think West African clubs are going to be anytime soon are going to be competing. There's exceptions. Like sometimes you have like Horoya in Guinea. They had very rich, powerful businessmen take charge and spend some money. That worked. ASEC Mimosa, they have a sort of philosophy, and they have a coach that's been there for 7 or 8 years. And I'm not going to talk about him, but he also, like manages to hang on to players and tries to steer players in the right directions, um, so that they pick the right clubs at the right time and so on and so forth. But yeah, so those countries are, I mean, those clubs are a little bit different. But like again, going back to Enyimba is a little bit different. Maybe it's a little bit of a strong institution, but the majority of Nigerian clubs, I think, fall into that category. Finally, and I'm probably not going to answer this one. I just want to throw it out to you guys. He says, Always Improve says, This is late, but it's something I've always wanted to have implemented in African football. A CAF Nations League. Separate all 54 African nations into three divisions, Division A, B, and C. 18 teams will be divided evenly into each division. From there, a draw will be made to fill out 6 groups of 3 teams. Whoever finishes top of their groups go into a championship playoff for the corresponding division title, while whoever finishes last goes into the relegation playoff. This would, I believe, revolutionize African football and allow the continent to move forward. Teams that barely win will be able to play against those of similar level and have something to fight for. The top teams would benefit from playing against each other so often, as it would result in being able to compete with the best in the world over time. What do you think of this idea? Yeah, this is obviously a twist on the UEFA Nations League. That's what they have going on. And I can understand, he justifies it at the end. The smaller teams play the smaller teams, and this way they're not pummeled 8-9-0 every single time, and the best teams play against the best teams, and that can also, iron sharpens iron. So when we go to a World Cup and play against the top teams, um, you know, we can go further and further. The one thing that throws a wrench into this a little bit is the AFCON. We have the AFCON every 2 years. I think there was a lot of open calendar space in Europe because they don't have the Euro every 2 years. And so um, I think sometimes you have to, like, they justify this, but do you really think that this is why UEFA wanted to implement the Nations League? Was that so that, the top teams can play the top teams and the weak teams can play the weak teams? I have my cynical hat on sometimes, and I think it's more about controlling things. Because if there's an open international window, who's in control? The national federations. So for example, Brazil will go play a prestigious friendly, and when they go play, for example, they played in Morocco. When they go play in Morocco, when they go play in England, those host countries pay them money, pay them millions of dollars to bring them over here to have this prestigious friendly be played. So the national teams are making money. When UEFA comes in and says, "Hey, you know what? Let's fill up this calendar space." Now who's making the money? It's not the national federations anymore. It's UEFA, and they're the ones that are controlling the calendar. And we could even see FIFA step in with their, the FIFA series that they launched in 2024, this year in March. For example, when Algeria played against South Africa and Bolivia, and Andorra was in that FIFA series as well. FIFA comes in and says, "Hey, you guys have an international window in March that's completely free after the AFCON. Why don't we do something cool called the FIFA series?" It's just like a meaningless tournament. But now FIFA is trying to get into it, be like, hey, I see it as a tussle between FIFA, the confederations, whether that be CAF or UEFA, and then even the national federations as well. Who's going to control uh, those windows? Because those windows mean sponsorship, money, TV viewership, and so on and so forth. So I'm a little more cynical. I don't think they really care about equilibrium and stuff. I mean, maybe they do a little, but that's not the primary reason why they do competitions like this. Is this a good idea? First of all, I don't think it's going to be possible because we tend to have less free calendar space because we have the AFCON. Unless you do something like where you integrate AFCON qualifying within the Nations League, and then it can get a little bit complicated, but that could be the case. Other than that, for me, there's just something more romantic. Personally, I believe that there's something more romantic about anybody being able to play anybody. And yeah, it's it helps us get to know one another better on the continent. I prefer the way things are. I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist. I don't hate the idea, but I wanted to throw it out to you guys. What do you think? And the good thing about AFCON qualifying right now is that it's done in 3 match days, 6 matches. We do it in 3 consecutive months: September, October, November. Boom, and then again, the national federations are the ones that are reaping the benefits of friendly windows later on in the year. Anyways, what do you guys think? Good idea or bad idea? We're going to bring it to a close now. Thank you for watching this episode of the African Football Roundup on the African Five Side Podcast. I'm Mahir Mizahi. This was a mailbag episode. Again, if you want to get your questions in for next time, the better quality questions, the better quality episode we're going to have, please follow us on x.com. Please follow us on YouTube. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get the posts when I send them out there. Usually I'll send them out there on a Thursday or Friday, and the episodes always come out on a Monday, as you know. So yeah, if you want to do that next time, please follow us on the other social media platforms. We have a very exciting week coming up. CAF Champions League at the end of the week. Gonna preview, gonna watch matches, gonna analyze matches as per. And then we're heading into the CAF Award times. And here's my promise to you. December, I'm gonna try to get 2 big interviews, whether that be coaches, players, or other big personalities in African football. That's going to be my pledge to you for the month of December. Really enjoying everybody's feedback on this channel. It's been growing like crazy. I remember I used to be happy when I used to get more than 1,000 views on YouTube. Now we're averaging around like 4,000 or 5,000 views. So please continue to share. Please continue to subscribe. Thumbs up, 5 stars on all audio platforms. And we'll speak to you in a few days now prior to the CAF Champions League. Take care all and peace.